Welcome to Innovation Guelph Events Toolkit Tuesday. I'm Nikki Campo. I'm Program Manager here at Innovation Guelph. And today's session is the first in our newly rebranded look and feel. This is the first Toolkit Tuesday as an official webinar. And we're really happy that you could join us here today to experience the presentation in American Sign Language. Please pin or spotlight the presenter and the interpreters, Liz and Dean, to the top of your screen in today's session. You can also access the Zoom closed caption function by clicking on the closed captioning option at the bottom of your screen. So before we get started today, I would like to call on Innovation Guelph Startup Program Coordinator, Shauna Hamilton, to say a few words.
Thanks, Mickey. So I'm going to do the land acknowledgement. So here we go. We would like to give recognition to the land that Guelph is on. We acknowledge that many others here today may be on different territory, so we invite and encourage you to give recognition to the land you occupy today and every day. As we gather for today's event, we are reminded that Guelph is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. As a city, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work. Today, we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shauna. Today's webinar is called Demystifying the World of Cybersecurity to Keep Your Customers and Your Business Safe. Dan Curtis from Reis Informatica is going to share best practices for identifying and reacting to potential cyber attacks, and will help us prepare for what we should do if an attack happens. I would like to take a quick minute to thank our corporate sponsors, Ernst & Young, Miller Thompson, Reis Informatica, Invest in Guelph, BDO, and Bonsai Growth. And we are grateful for the support in everything that we do here at IG. So thank you very much. In addition, a big thank you to Sign Language Interpreting Associates of Ottawa for providing today's ASL interpretation. Just real quickly, before handing the controls over to Dan, I would like to take a minute to tell you a little bit about Innovation Guelph, or as many call us, IG. Innovation Guelph is one of 17 regional innovation centers in Ontario. And while we're located here in Guelph, we actually serve the entire region of Southern Ontario and have a national program. So we actually have clients in BC all the way to Nova Scotia. While most of our clients are in Guelph and surrounding area, we do work with companies of all sizes, shapes, disciplines, and definitely from startup to scale up. So if any of you are interested, we would be interested in talking to you about your company and how we can help you grow. We have lots of programs and workshops and networking opportunities, and even a trade show called the Ontario Innovation Expo. So I will leave it at that. Enough about us. We're here to talk to Dan. So today's session will be presented by Dan Curtis. Dan discovered a passion for cybersecurity 6 years ago while working with an original equipment manufacturer that developed a proprietary vulnerability and risk management tool. He spent the last 2 years leading the sales organization at Reis Informatica, headquartered in Kitchener, Ontario, and while keeping a close affiliation with Reis's cybersecurity-focused sister company, Cyberscopic, which is headquartered in Portugal. He has worked tirelessly over the years to make sure that his clients are armed with the best form of cyber attack defense, which is knowledge and education. Dan has a passion for helping clients demystify the world of cybersecurity by sharing best practices and identifying and reacting to potential cyber attacks and preparing them for what they should do if an attack is successful. He has a keen sense for the widest attack vector that every company has, which is, of course, their people. So should you have any questions for Dan today, please use the Q&A feature in webinar, And Jordan will monitor and ask your questions when the right moment appears during the presentation, or of course, at the end of the presentation during the organized question and answer period. So thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to pass things over to Dan. So Dan, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. I feel like I'm blushing. Let me just see if I can get to share my screen here. Bear with me. I work for a technology company. There we go.
Excellent.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. And I just want to reiterate, if there are any questions along the way, please do use the Q&A function. I want this to be a good use of your time. This is not going to get super technical. Some of this stuff is going to be fairly common sense. Some of the stuff is going to be stuff that maybe you hadn't thought about. Really, my goal for today is, if I could have you leave here today and be a little more discerning with your email, and a little more conscious of what's going on in the world from a cybersecurity perspective, then I've done my job. So we can get started. Let me see here. Get this going. Where is it? There it is. There we go. So this is really going to talk about phishing, ransomware, and how it's going to relate to you. As we all know, security technology is changing all the time, but knowledge is really the true key to being able to protect both yourself personally and your business. So we'll get into the agenda. So we'll start with some introductions. Then I'd like to get into a little bit about phishing and spear phishing and what those are and what their intent is. Social engineering, specifically social media engineering, is really where I'd like to focus. We're going to talk a little bit about ransomware. I have some real world examples from some of Reis Informatica's clients and some publicly known examples as well. I'd like to get into some tips and tricks and best practices, and then finish up with how Reis Informatica and Cyberscopic may be able to help, and we'll leave a bit of a portion at the end for any Q&A. So from an introduction standpoint, although they did a great job over at IG introducing me, but my name is Dan Curtis. I am the team lead of sales at Reis Informatica. I've been here for 2 years. I started basically the day the pandemic started, so it was very interesting time to start a new job. I've spent 16 years in the IT industry working for various resellers and OEMs. 10 years of that 16 have been with managed service providers such as Reis Informatica. 6 of those years have been with managed security service providers, and 4 of those 6 years were with a cybersecurity OEM that had a proprietary risk management solution. I want to be clear that I am not technical at all. So on the call today, one of my technicians, Matt Carey, he will be available to answer technical questions should they come up. I'm not anticipating a lot of them will, but should something technical that flies over my head come up, I do have a bit of a springboard. Matt is one of our senior technicians. He's been with Rhys for about 10 years now, and he's seen quite a bit throughout all of that. So I'm very confident that if any technical questions come up, Matt would be able to field them. So getting started. So phishing and spear phishing. So phishing is a cyber attack that basically weaponizes an email, and it's made to look as if it's coming from something that's legitimate, and it is typically sent indiscriminately. The term phishing comes from the actual thought of throwing a net into the water to see who you can catch, and they changed it to a pH. I might be dating myself, but some of you may remember the term phreaking with a pH. That's kind of how that came about. You've probably seen emails like this, and typically they will be things like your Office 365 account is expiring, so click here to put in your login information, or perhaps FedEx is trying to deliver a package to you, and click here for your way bill or your invoice. Your bank urgently needs information from you. Now I've put a couple of asterisks on here because we're going to go through an example a little bit later. But typically these things will revolve around anything financial. Money is emotional, right? So people respond to money. You're going to get a lot more hits if you're talking about money rather than if you're talking about like a package, for instance. Literally anyone is trying to give you a refund for anything. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Costco does not want to give you a $200 gift card for sharing a post on Facebook. They just don't. It's not a good business model. And if you have revised invoices or receipts or payments that you weren't expecting, these are the typical things that a phishing email will do. They'll also send it to just about everybody in an organization once they figure out the naming convention of your email. So it's first initial, last name at wherever. They'll send it to everybody and see who they can catch. As an example, we got this one. So this was sent to our VCIO, and you can see there's a few telltale signs that I want you to really pay attention to. So for instance, the sender here is epayment.reisinformatica.com. There's no such thing as that. But you'll see the email address from which it's coming from is support@homsmart.com. There's other telltale signs as well. When you look at the subject line and it says there's an EFT process on the 16th of February, February is not capitalized. It is a new fax received for Matt Laverne, and that is our VCIO. And to download the attached for details. So this was a link that you could click to download a malicious file. Now our system peeled it out so that we weren't able to actually download the file. But this is how they do it. There's a few other little signs here, like for more information on Xerox products and solutions, period, please visit Xerox.com. If you hover over that link, it doesn't actually take you to Xerox.com. But I didn't include that in here. Also, who's sending faxes? It's 2022. So moving on to spear phishing. Spear phishing is a bit more sophisticated. It's a bit more direct, and it's not quite cast with such a wide net. So typical examples of spear phishing is emails are coming to you appearing to be coming from someone that you know, like a boss or a coworker. They will typically be asking you to do something that's outside of your regular responsibilities, and they'll typically ask you to kind of keep it secret. Just as a personal example, I received this. So this is an email purporting to be from my CEO, who is Enrique Rhys. But you'll notice the email address from which it's coming is bomberjack97@gmail.com. Also, the subject line is CEO, which is also kind of weird. This also happened on a Saturday morning at 7:47 a.m., where he's asking me to discreetly complete a task because he's in a meeting and can't talk. So just reply me back. So I did what, every regular person should do, and I just had a little fun. So I asked him what I could do. I was heading out to run some errands, and I'm happy to help with whatever he's looking to get done. And what I was asked for was 3 eBay gift cards for $500 each. He asked me to get the cards at the store, scratch the back of the codes, and email him a picture. So this went on for most of the day. I wasted as much of this guy's time as I possibly could, and eventually I sent him a picture of my notepad with the codes, and the codes were the police - are coming, put on pants - you're in trouble - And then I never heard from him again. So I like to waste these guys' time simply because the more of their time that I'm wasting, the less time that they have to be successful with someone else. A little bit into the social media engineering aspect. The biggest culprit here, and I'm sure that this is no surprise to anyone, is Facebook. And we'll get into a bit more detail on there as we move forward. Your second biggest offender is LinkedIn. You also have Twitter, you have TikTok, and I put MySpace on here as a joke, but if anybody here has a MySpace, I want to know about it. I want to go see it. So how does this happen? So how do I get an email purporting to be my boss? It's because they're doing research on sites like Facebook and LinkedIn. So if you think about the kind of information that you're just putting out on Facebook just for everyone to know, it's your name, your birthday, where you live, your job sometimes, who your friends are, who your coworkers are, children if you have them, and their names and pictures, and little Susie did great at her dance recital kind of pictures. Your family members, who's in your family, if there's important anniversaries or dates in your life, and political affiliations that you may have. On the children's subject, I have two children. I have a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. And if you went to my Facebook page, you would never know that I had children because I do not put pictures of them and I do not name them or talk about them. I have a rule that if I want you to see my children, you will see them. Otherwise, you won't. And then the quizzes, Facebook quizzes, my goodness. I don't know if any of you have ever done a Facebook quiz, but quite often I see it go by on my feed where people are like, oh, this will be fun. Oh, what was your mother's maiden name? What street did you grow up on? And these are all questions that they're answering willingly and putting out for the world to see. But they also happen to be questions that financial institutions will use to recover your passwords or to recover your credit card numbers and things like that. I actually had a university professor who it was a meme of like, tell me what the first car you owned was. And he, of course, put out like 1969 Corvette. And then a week later, his Facebook was hacked and his bank account was hacked. And these are things that people are just putting out there because they think it's fun, and don't realize that there are people out there that are harvesting this information and using it against you later on. LinkedIn is another way that they do it, where you can see where you currently work, any sort of profile information, so where you went to school, like all of that info that you fill in on LinkedIn, any past occupations, your current and past bosses, hobbies and interests, like what are you into? What are you liking? What are you commenting on? Blog posts, if you write blogs, and also political affiliations. So when you get into more things like the Twitters of the world and the TikToks of the world, it's much less about your personally identifiable information, but it is a lot more about your political affiliations. So they can kind of hone and target the kind of stuff that they're sending to you, things that you would be more likely to click on. Excuse me. I'm going to show you an example of this social media engineering. So I've redacted the customer information here so that they're not identified. This was a situation where this is a current client of ours, but her email was hacked, and we think it happened somewhere in the January-February timeframe. And they sat and wait and watched how she interacted with people, watched who she interacted with, and then unleashed this at the end of May. Judith and Marcia are two people who work at the bank. I didn't want to name the bank, but they are a prominent Canadian bank. And the request was to set up Brad Austin as a chief operating officer, and give Brad Austin access to everything, the ability to access all of the accounts, to set up people to approve or release wire transfers, and they asked for the forms, and provided Brad's mobile number, which was being routed. What ended up happening was the bank just ended up doing it. They gave this person full administrative access to their account. So what Brad Austin did was created a second user. Then he initiated a wire transfer for $350,000, logged back in as this other user and approved it because they have a two-person approval process. The only saving grace is that this was attempted over the Memorial Day long weekend in the States. So the bank was actually closed for one extra day. So the bank here in Canada was able to pull the wire transfer back. That was just happenstance. Excuse me. So it ended up being that the RCMP were involved, the FBI were involved. It was a pretty big investigation. I have another client who I was going to use the emails in this presentation today, but it has recently become under investigation by the FBI, so they asked me to not use it in here. But I'm allowed to tell the story. So they are a trucking and logistics company, and they are buying a transport truck from a place in California. So they were basically down to the wire of getting the payment all arranged. And then they got an email from somebody who looked like they were from that company, saying, hey, I need you to cancel that payment and send it to this account instead. The company that was doing the financing, they were called like rms-leasing.com. And this email came from rms-leasing.com, which obviously is not the same place. But they did make the changes to the wire transfer. They did cancel the original one and make the changes and sent $70,000 to an account that wasn't the vendor. So the FBI is investigating that now. I'm confident they'll be able to get that money back, but it's just that simple. So primarily around financial stuff, if anything you take away today, don't do anything financial via email. It needs to be over the phone. It needs to be in person. There needs to be signatures on paper if you're making wholesale changes to your banking information. And if you're receiving emails from your vendors or your clients asking you to make changes to the banking information, get on the phone, call them. So let's move on to ransomware. So using that phishing and spear phishing technique typically will end up with the delivery of ransomware. Ransomware is a piece of software designed to encrypt your files, including your backups if they can get to them, and render them absolutely useless until one of three things happen. Now, number one is you pay the ransom. And depending on the industry and the type of data that they've encrypted, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you all heard about the Colonial Pipeline in Texas. They got ransomwared. They paid $4.4 million worth of Bitcoin to get their data back. Now, they have been able to get some of that money back because the FBI and the CIA have been kind of tracing that. But unless you have unlimited resources, you're not going to get that money back. Number two is you don't pay the ransom and you lose all your files and you basically start over, which is obviously not a great option. And number three is you're able to restore from a snapshot or an unaffected backup from a point in time prior to the ransomware actually propagating in your network. It sounds counterintuitive to say, but the ransomware people, when you call that number, so I don't know if this one has a phone number on it, but sometimes they'll have a phone number for you to call. Their customer service is actually quite good. And it sounds weird to say. The reason being is if you didn't actually pay the ransom, if people like paid the ransom and you didn't get your data back, then no one would ever pay the ransom. So when you call these places, they're actually quite polite and you get your key like that. and they're trying to basically make it so paying the ransom is the easiest option for you. In my opinion, having unaffected backups and snapshots is the best option for you. So how do we get here? So the old way that they used to do this would be someone would have to gain access to your network first and foremost. They would have to find and access whatever data they were looking for, whether it's proprietary data, whether it's financial data, whether it's HR data, what have you. They would have to copy and exfiltrate that data, get it out of your network. And then they would have to find somebody who would be willing to buy that data, who would be willing to pay money for it. And then they would have to transact the funds and transmit the data. And they'd have to do all of this stuff completely undetected. Now, the new way is much simpler. You buy a ransomware kit from the dark web, you follow the instructions that come with it, and you unleash it. Now, how did we get here? Really, ransomware exists because of the advent of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, for those of you that don't know about it or understand it, is a completely decentralized currency that is next to impossible to trace. So any transactions that are happening, they're next to impossible to trace. Now, again, if you have the resources of the CIA, you might be able to get somewhere. But for the most part, regular people like you and me, once the Bitcoin's gone, there's no way that you can figure out where it went. So the idea now is not that they have to find somebody who would find value in your data, right? They just have to know that you have value in your data. So, for example, there was a NASCAR team a few years ago, and a kid bought a ransomware kit off the dark web for $400, got it out to this NASCAR team, and somebody clicked on it, and it encrypted all of their data. Now, the NASCAR team figures it was probably about $4 million worth of data. But it's data that doesn't mean anything to me, and it wouldn't mean anything to you. It's things like, tire telemetry and engine efficiency and all of this research and development that they're doing on these NASCARs that really mean nothing to me. But it's worth $4 million to them. So he demanded $5,000 worth of Bitcoin, and they paid it. They just paid it because it was worth the $4 million. So if that's something to remember, it's as long as you value your data, that's all that they need. Gone are the days where they have to go find somebody that wants to buy it. So what do we look for? So typically phishing emails and spear-phishing emails will have some telltale signs. Some of those clues are very obvious. Others may not be so. There are some key things to check for. I did show a couple of examples earlier where you're looking at weirdo grammar and stuff, but if we get a little deeper, so does the name of the sender match the email address? That's the first thing you should look at. If you remember, Enrique Rhys is actually bomberjacques97@gmail.com. Is the domain from which the email coming, is it correct? A lot of the time people will spoof domains where, instead of it being like a lowercase l, they'll put a number 1 instead. Just if you're not looking closely, you can kind of get away with it. Or in the example of the trucking company where it was RMS -- leasing instead of just a single dash. Are there obvious grammar and spelling mistakes? That is usually a telltale sign, because typically the people that are sending these out are going to be usually, like in Europe, Russia is really bad for it. I know that a lot of them come from Kazakhstan, places like that. So English may not be their first language, and Google Translate only does so well. Are there attachments that you weren't expecting? Is there a weird Excel sheet attached to whatever they're sending? Is there a weird PDF that you weren't expecting? Really good best practice is, if you get an attachment from someone that you're not expecting, get on the phone and call them and ask them if they meant to send that to you, because it's very possible that it may not be legitimate, and by the time you open it, it's too late. Are the sizes of the attachments reasonable? So, a typical PDF document would be about maybe 10 to 12 kilobytes per page, right? I've received emails where it has a PDF document attached to it, and it's 1 kilobyte. So I can pretty much tell that that's not really a PDF document. It's just made to look like one, and it wants me to open it. Are there unexpected links? Are they asking you to click on something and go somewhere? And things like emails from your bank, well, they'll never email you and ask you to click on this link and go to your bank. The government will never email you and tell you to click on this link and go log into your account. They may tell you to go to my account at canada.com or whatever to go to get your income tax stuff, but they'll never give you a link to go click it. Do the links pass the hover test? So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this feature, but a lot of the time, if you just hover your mouse over a link that's in an email, it will give you a preview of where that link is going to take you. So, for instance, we need to verify your identity, and it's www.yourbank.com. But when you hover over it, you can see it's taking you to www.thisisnotyourrealbank.com. So that's a really good way to do a smell test when you've got weirdo links that people are sending you. You'll know if it's not going to where it's supposed to be going. Is it sloppy? Like, do the fonts change? Are weirdo words capitalized? Things like that. It kind of rolls back to the grammar and spelling. But and finally, does it have anything at all to do with money? Excuse me. So a few years ago, I used to write phishing campaigns, and we would put them into clients and see how they did. And we would try ones like, FedEx packages are being delivered, or your Bell Mobility bill is ready, things like that. And the hits weren't really good. So what I decided to do was find out from their HR department which payroll company they used. A lot of the cases, folks would use like ADP. And so I would draft up an email to look like it was coming from ADP and send it out to everybody to say, your employer has deducted $88.12 from your payroll. Please click here to download your new pay stub. And we would get like 90-something% hits because it's emotional, right? You're dealing with somebody's money. So anytime that emails are coming around that have anything at all to do with money, be wary of them. Be extra cautious around them. So how do you protect yourself? So first and foremost, and this is what I tell everyone, a strong password policy in your organization and also in your regular life is one of the main keys to protecting yourself. It should include 8 or more characters, preferably more like 12 or 16, if possible. It should be alphanumeric. You should have special symbols included in there. A really good way to do that is to replace certain letters with certain symbols. So you could use the @ symbol to replace the A. You could use the ampersand to replace an E, that sort of thing. Nothing personally identifying, so your birthday, your address, things like that. And then force changes every 3 to 6 to 12 months, depending on how complex it is. Excuse me. Preferably, it would be a passphrase. That's kind of where things are leading now, where it's a group of a bunch of words that you'll remember, but it's going to be nice and long. And I'll demonstrate how difficult those are to kind of crack. Also, the same password should not be used for different places. I know that people are creatures of habit, and it's interesting to me when people's Facebook gets hacked that they're surprised that other accounts, other places get hacked, because that's typically how it goes. Once one of your passwords is discovered, they just go and try it everywhere. So I understand also that it's difficult to maintain, you know, a different password for a bunch of different places. So a recommendation that I make is to get yourself a password keeper or a password generator. There are options online that you can get. Some of them you pay for, and they're just a lot more feature rich. But there's a lot of them out there that are free. So things like NordPass or Keeper or Dashlane or LastPass or Passbolt. These are all examples of password keepers. Personally, I use one called Bitwarden, and it goes into a Google Chrome extension. So when I go to a site where I need to put in a login and a password, I just click on the Bitwarden button at the top, and it fills it all in for me. Excuse me. So you don't have to remember 25 or 30 different passwords. So I wanted to talk about the importance of password strength, because we recently did a project with a client where we were implementing a new password policy, but he had sent us what everyone's passwords were, and you would be surprised how many people had this as their password: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So as you can imagine, it takes exactly 0 seconds to crack that password. Let's just say, you know, you have a daughter named April and she was born in 1982. That's, you know, that's something a lot of people do as well. That password takes 1.69 seconds to hack. So let's just say you were born on February 17th. Your name's Judy. You love dogs. That one takes 3 hours. So let's just say that you were born on February 17th. Your name's Judy. You love dogs, and you're super excited about all three of those things. 9 days. So now you're born on February 17th. Your name's Judy. You love dogs. You got a daughter named April, and you're very excited about all 4 of those things. 29 years. So what is the guess for this one? For born on February 17th, name's Judy, love dogs, got a daughter named April, born in 1982, very excited about all 5 of those things. 92 million years. That's how long it would take to crack that password. And you can see that it's not that difficult to have a really complicated password. If you can remember 4 or 5 words together, you can do this. You can do this and you can be protected. So what do you do? If it appears that you've clicked on something that you shouldn't have, what now? Follow the 3 R's. Number 1, report it. Number 2, report it. Number 3, report it. All too often, what happens is folks will click on something that they shouldn't have, and then realize that they've done it, and try to back out or try to cancel or try to turn off their machine to try and save the embarrassment. Because it is a bit of an embarrassing thing, right? You got tricked. It is super, super vitally important that you report something like that to your IT department or to your MSP if you're working with an MSP as soon as you know that it happens. The longer that you wait, the more potential there is for a lot of damage to be done. So how does Rhys help? So we can help in a number of different ways. First and foremost, as a managed services provider, we're taking care of things like patching your servers and making sure that all of your security updates are done. We patch and maintain your desktops. We maintain antivirus and that sort of thing on all of your machines. We're watching for weird behavioral things if the machines are acting strange, and that kind of happens on the managed services side of things. Our sister company, Cyberscopic, is a managed security services company, where they're basically like a security operations center 24/7. So we have offices that are all around the world, including here in Kitchener, in Brazil, in Lisbon, Portugal, and in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. That way we can provide a true follow the sun 24-hour-a-day coverage. So those patches and those remediation things are happening in the middle of the night while you sleep. Malaysia is exactly opposite the clock. So it's 12:42 here in the afternoon, and it's 12:42 in the morning there. With Cyberscopic, it's a lot stronger of a security play, in that it's an entire kind of suite of products that we've put together, including like a next generation antivirus. And what I mean by that is it's not just doing signature-based antivirus work the way that traditional antiviruses do. It's also doing machine learning and AI, right? So it's looking for behavioral anomalies that are happening. So why is this computer trying to log in to the HR folder? Why is this machine trying to log in at 3 o'clock in the morning? That's not a normal thing. So that antivirus will do all of that. It does dark web scanning. So we're looking for login credentials and passwords that are out there for sale. It comes with a log aggregator as well. So it'll hook up to your firewalls, and it will show you, when you're being port scanned. It will show you when connections are being allowed, when connections are being denied, where those connections are coming from. And then there's a portal that you can use, so you can see in real time what your vulnerability and attack surface looks like. The idea behind this is to make your attack surface as small as possible. The reason for that is the smaller your attack surface is, the more expensive and the more resources need to be used to try and get in. And once you get to a point where it's very expensive for hackers to try and get to you, they're going to just move on to an easier target. So Cyberscopic helps reduce that surface and kind of keep those hackers away. I'm not saying it's 100%. There's no way that anybody can guarantee 100% security, short of firing all of your people and disconnecting from the internet. That's the only way that you're going to do it. But this is one of the next best things. So a part of the offering around Cyberscopic is the Core Lite and the Core. The difference between the two is the Core comes with something called EDR, which is endpoint detection and response. There's a few different companies that do that, but Cyberscopic uses CrowdStrike in particular, but it will work with other EDR solutions as well. So if you've already got one in place, Cyberscopic will work alongside of it. There's like I said, there's threat intelligence. There's the SIM, that's the security incident event manager. That's the log aggregator. They're monitoring Office 365. So if you've got people logging in from countries that they shouldn't be, they'll reach out and ask, hey, like, do you have somebody trying to log in from Brazil? And if not, then it gets blocked. There's also additional add-ons for web browsing protection to make sure that you're not going to sites that are blacklisted, and also backup and email security through Office 365 through a product. It used to be called ATP, which was Advanced Threat Protection, but it's now called Windows Defender for 365, I believe. That's a very cool product. If you're using Office 365 right now and you're not using Windows Defender, I'd highly recommend it. It's a couple of bucks per user per month. And what it does is it actually will take any attachments that are coming to you via email, and it will pull them off into a little sandbox and open them up and just make sure that they're okay. And if they're okay, it gets delivered, and if they're not, it gets peeled off. If you're not really interested in a managed services offering or a managed security services offering, there is a hardware solution for this as well. Now, we are the number 3 partner in Canada with a company called Scale Computing. The way that Scale Computing works is that it comes in a cluster where you have 3 nodes. It only allows you to provision the resources of 2 of those nodes, so that you could have an entire node fail and your users would never know the difference. There's three really cool things about that. First of all, it has its own hypervisor. So if you're currently using servers and storage and VMware, anything you're paying for VMware every year goes away because it's all included. It's all included in this. It's also entirely scalable. So if you get to a point where you're using the top end of your resources, all you do is get another node and add it in, and then the other nodes say, "Hey, I know you," and then share the resources around the whole thing. Where this is really important, though, is in the snapshots. So the way that this works is it has something called immutable snapshots, which means that the snapshots are managed by the hardware itself. So if you were to get ransomware, the ransomware usually will go after your backups. Is kind of the first place that it goes. It can't get to your snapshots through the way that Scale operates their equipment. So you can actually reverse time and restore from a snapshot. And I want to say it's like 3 clicks in 2 minutes or something like that. You would lose an hour of work or however often you have scheduled the snapshots to be, but you wouldn't have ransomware anymore and you wouldn't have to pay a ransom. You can see that there's quick recovery as well. So you can go and pull virtual machines and stand them back up in minutes. It's a huge differentiator, and from a security standpoint, it's one of the most secure systems that are out there. If you're in a position where you're looking to replace some infrastructure, so servers and that sort of thing, typically Scale comes in at about half the price as a one-to-one server replacement. So we're just about to the end here. As I'm sure, I'm sure you're all tired of hearing my voice. So I just wanted to run through a few of the key takeaways that I really want you to leave with today. First is be discerning with your email. Ask an extra question. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and confirm that somebody was trying to send you something. Don't do anything with your finances because you got an email. Those sorts of conversations need to happen either over the phone or in person with ink on paper. Use a password generator or a password keeper, so like a Bitwarden or any of the other ones that I had mentioned. And I'm pretty sure the guys at IG are going to share this deck as well. So you'll have a copy of all of those. Implement a strong password policy. 92 million years is pretty tough to crack. So I highly recommend a strong password policy, passphrases, that sort of thing, and not just in your business life, but in your personal life as well. Keep your software up to date. All of the time, software vendors are putting out patches for discovered vulnerabilities, that sort of thing. Microsoft calls it Patch Tuesday. Keep your software up to date and patched, and that's where managed care kind of comes into things, because that's where we take care of that for you if that's something that you're interested in. Keep your hardware up to date. So just because your software is patched and fully up to date, the hardware on which it sits may not be capable of supporting it. So keep your hardware within its life cycle, keep it supported, and keep it up to date. Hover test links before you click them. So just put your little cursor on top of the link and double check that it is going to take you to where it says it's going to take you. You will save yourself a lot of heartache just by doing that. Enable two-factor authentication if possible. There are products out there. Microsoft has Microsoft Authenticator, which if you're using Office 365, it's free. It's free. It just needs to be turned on. And that's where you try to log into your Office 365 account, and it'll send something to your phone, and then you hit the button on your phone that, yes, that's me trying to log in, and then off you go. It's very good idea from a security perspective. Avoid using public networks, and if you must use a public network, don't do anything sensitive. Don't do your banking on the Tim Hortons free Wi-Fi. Just don't. Back up your important data. and absolutely verify any and all financial transactions. Anything to have to do with your money. I can't stress this enough, because we've seen some pretty bad stuff, especially lately, with the sanctions and such that have been placed on Russia. They are turning more and more to cybercrime in order to fund themselves. So I would expect an uptick in that the longer that this incursion in Ukraine continues. Be careful of what you share on social media. We went through the list of all of the things that you've just kind of put out there, and just be conscious of what you're letting the world know and what you're letting them know for free. And for the love of God, don't do Facebook quizzes. Nobody cares what kind of cheesecake you are. And that's all I got. Is there any questions? Is there any comments?
We have comments and questions. Thanks so much, Dan.
You got it.
It was wonderful. I'll start with a comment in our chat box, an important comment from Juliana when you were speaking about how to strengthen your passwords. She mentions the problem is that people use a password like that one that takes 92 million years to crack, but then they will just mix up the sections when they're trying to change the password for other logins. And then if someone figures out one version, they can just reorder it and recombine. Sections, yeah.
Right. So this is why I would recommend something like a Bitwarden, and I can share the link with you guys as well. You can actually use Bitwarden to generate a password for you. So you can go to whatever site you're going to and say, I forgot my password or change my password. And then you can have Bitwarden actually generate one for you. And it'll be like 26 characters long. And I don't even think you see it. It's just ... is all you see. But it will remember that password. So you don't have to worry about changing and switching around the sections and things like that if you use a tool like that.
Thank you. Okay, so we have hands up, we have questions that were submitted on our registration form, and we have questions coming in. So I'm going to rotate between all three of those. So if you've noted you have a question, I see you and I will get to you. Okay, so do you have any recommendations or a preference for password keepers for a team of 12 people?
Sure. I mean, I use Bitwarden. It's fairly basic and it's free. You could definitely do something like that. If you want to get into something like LastPass, I think that they have a charge for like a business version of it. But if you're going to pay for it, they're a little bit more feature rich. So something like LastPass or Keeper would be all right. But I mean, I use Bitwarden and it's great. It's great. It comes as a little Chrome extension in my Google Chrome like web browser, and I've just got everything saved in there.
Okay.
It works like a master pass. So you have a master password to get into Bitwarden, and then all of your passwords are saved in there. So just don't forget your master password, and then you'll be okay.
Awesome. I think, Shauna, if you could take note of Bitwarden, and we'll include it in our follow-up email for everybody as a link, just as an extra piece. Another question, how common is it for someone to hack and view your camera? Is it something we should be concerned about and always have our webcams covered?
That's kind of tough to answer. I mean, I think it's a good best practice that if you're not using your camera to keep it closed. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about it if you've got proper security on your device. I'm not sure if Matt Carey's on the line, if he has an opinion on that. But I would say I wouldn't worry too much about something like that. But it may not be a bad idea to cover up your webcam if you're not using it.
Okay.
If you're walking around in your underwear.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to someone with their hand up. So I'm going to test out the allow to talk feature. Again, we're a trial for our webinar here. So I'm going to go to James. I'm going to say allow to talk. There you go. Can anyone else hear James? No? Okay. No. Are you talking, James? Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe we can come back or you can type your question because we can't hear you. Oh. Okay, I think we'll wait to see if we can hear you. Yeah, we can't hear you. I've allowed you to talk. I'm not sure why we can't hear you. We will all watch for it. So if we do hear you or you can type your question out, we'll watch for that. Sorry. So in the meantime, Dan, what do you think about VPNs in general? What about using them when out on public Wi-Fi networks?
Yeah, I mean, if VPNs are always preferred. Like if you can create yourself a private little tunnel out of the internet, then that's preferred for sure.
Awesome. Okay. So some questions that some people submitted on our registration form. What would be your recommendation for the best security practices to get started with from your first day in business? So if there's anything to consider from day one to get this going right away, what do you recommend starting with?
I would probably say like multi-factor authentication would be a big one. So it's again, it's like the authenticator where you get, you texted a code or you get a push to your phone just to confirm that you are who you say you are. Just getting started, I've found that with a lot of clients, as folks join organizations and there's a new email address out there all of a sudden, and I think maybe even the IG guys can corroborate this, but new people join organizations and then they start getting emails like the one that I got from my boss asking me to do something like that. Starting a new organization is just ripe. It's just ripe for the pickings. So I would say multi-factor authentication absolutely would be where I would start, and a really strong password policy.
Awesome. Yeah, we can definitely attest to that. Both Sean and I got an email from our fake CEO on our first day. So that absolutely happens. Great. Thank you. Are there any particular vulnerabilities for e-commerce companies and best practices you would recommend for those?
Vulnerabilities for e-commerce companies. Really, as far as that goes, I mean, I would mostly just be worried about various forms of fraud. If you're saying your e-commerce company as if you're selling stuff, I would be mostly concerned with fraud. So dealing with, like I had showed, like anything financial that's coming through by email, be suspect of, and really pay attention when with payments and such. There's a lot of folks that are doing e-commerce that are PCI compliant, so that you can charge credit cards and things like that. That is a good level of security to make sure that things are on the level. But these people aren't getting worse at what they do. They're only getting better. So I would say just be very watchful for people doing things that are on the level.
Okay, awesome. What are some best practices to protect yourself from Trojan horse attacks?
From which, sorry?
Trojan horse attacks.
Trojan horse attacks. It has been a long time since I have talked about a Trojan horse attack. Hang on. I think your best bet would be good antivirus is going to be your best bet. And not just the signature-based antivirus, like not just like Norton. I would go with something like CrowdStrike or something with an EDR involved with it. But I mean, Trojan horses have been around for a long time, so your antivirus is gonna pick that up 9 times out of 10.
Awesome.
It's a good question. You're dating me here.
What can workplaces do to prevent social media engineering? And is it recommended and even feasible to have a social media policy for all of your employees?
Um, Education is really the key, and I don't know where that kind of falls in line with, you know, people's personal rights. I mean, you have the right to kind of post whatever you want on social media, right? Now, workplaces do request, and ours is no different, that, you know, when you're on social media, remember that you are a representative of the company, and you know, you're going to be considered as such. But I don't know if there's much that you can do as far as like mandating what people can and can't post on social media. Ultimately, cybersecurity training is going to be key. The more you know, and the more you're prepared to, and the better you are at identifying when these sorts of social media engineering things are happening, the better off you'll be. It's just a constant education. It's a constant education session. You know, the things that we were doing 6 months ago from a cybersecurity perspective aren't good enough now. You know, like there's companies out there right now that have, you know, a firewall and they have their antivirus, and you know, 10 years ago that was great. Today, it's covering maybe 40% of the attack vectors that you've got. So cybersecurity training up and down.
Thank you. I know James still has a question. I'm so sorry that we can't hear you. I can promote you to panelist. It would kind of prompt you to come back in separately, and I can do that if you're okay with that. So give me a thumbs up if so. If not, we'll just wait for you to type the question if you're able to. So in the meantime, I'll go to our next question. Do you have any tips, Dan, for validating text message scams?
Yes, and really the tip is ignore them. If you're getting text messages, and I get them all the time saying, you know, like I've got a refund waiting for me, and anything that's going to text you a link, and typically it's going to come from a number that you don't recognize. Ignore it, block it, delete it. Again, like Costco does not want to give you a $200 gift card for no reason. They just don't. I would just block them and delete them. I've even called the numbers that text me these things, and the numbers don't even go anywhere. They don't even land anywhere. So they're kind of spoofed numbers trying to trick you.
All right, good to know. Are there significant differences in the solutions you recommend depending on business size? So would a really small business have a different recommendation than a really large one for their cybersecurity?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the way that our services work, like we have clients that have 2 users, and we have clients that have like 1,300 users, something like that. So it scales appropriately. You know, we've really taken the time to go and find the best of breed products and services to include in both the tools that we use to manage our clients, and in the tools that Cyberscopic uses to secure those clients. And we would stand by that portfolio up and down.
Awesome. Okay. So James will be joining as a panelist so he can ask his question out loud. But while we wait for him, our next question is, would you say cybersecurity is a lot easier for employers who provide computers and phones and other devices to their employees and get them protected as a whole versus those who require you to use your personal devices, which I do have friends that have employers that
Sure.
ask them to use their personal. So what are the differences there?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you've got a corporate policy where you're providing a computer and a phone, then you have control over it. So you can set the administrative rights to that machine. So, you know, are you giving your people the ability to install software on that machine? Are you giving them the ability to make administrative changes to that machine? You can decide what they can and cannot do on their phone as well. So we actually use a product on our phones. It's a Meraki mobile device manager. Essentially, what it does is it allows for, like, let's just say my phone got stolen. We can actually log into the Meraki portal and we can wipe all of the corporate data off of that phone. So you would need to have some sort of MDM or mobile device management solution in place if you were going to be asking people to bring their own device, because their own devices, you don't have any control over what they're doing from a security perspective, right? And it may not be up to corporate snuff. And so if they're bringing their own computer or their own phone in and they're connecting to your network, it's an attack vector. It's a risk. So having a company policy where you're providing that stuff, it gives you a lot more control, I would say, than the other way around. But there are ways around it. It's a bit more software that you need in order to control the stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we have James now. So feel free to ask your question, James. Oh no, I still don't hear you. I feel like it might be a microphone thing.
Might be a microphone thing.
We can see you. I can see that you're talking. We cannot hear you. Okay. Well, keep trying to figure it out. Maybe if you start talking and we hear you, we'll absolutely pause for your question. And if not, maybe we can connect after, since I have your email, and we can get a question answered after for you. Okay, in the chat box, Juliana asks, can you please provide us with a link for the MBM? I think that's what you said, for staff that can use their own computer. If we could have a link. Okay.
Yep, I can get that for you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And then, Matt answered too. Thanks, Matt. Okay, going back to passwords, how often do you recommend passwords be changed? And does that depend on what the password's being used for? Are there different recommendations per what you're logging into?
I think that, a good rule of thumb is like every 6 months, and it's not just like your work stuff, but you may want to look at doing that as a wholesale activity across everything that you do online. Now, the more complicated it is, like in that example with the 92 million, if you're going to be using like passphrases, I think the going recommendation right now is a year. The reason for that is that if you're mandating really complicated passwords, and then you mandate them changing like once a month or every 60 days, you end up burning a lot of your IT support desk time, because people forget their password that they've had to change and change and change and change. So if you make it very, very complicated, like in that example, the 92 million years or whatever, I think the recommendation, the going rate right now is a year, to keep it like that for a year. Okay,
awesome. Seems reasonable. Okay, so I have a question from myself.
Sure.
Last time we did an educational session with you guys, it was recommended that passwords could be a sentence, and then you perhaps capitalize every word in the sentence and add some special features on the end. Yep. Is that still a good standard?
Yeah, it's not a bad standard at all. Again, like with a passphrase, especially if the words don't make sense together, but they make sense to you, that's ideal. Like, obviously, the longer your password is, the harder it's going to be to crack. But a sentence with, like, every other letter capitalized, or every other word capitalized, or using special characters in place of letters, like the @ symbol for the A's and things like that, anything that adds extra complexity to it is preferred.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can.
We can.
Okay.
Yay.
Sorry, I was on my phone and it wouldn't do it on my phone, so I had to reconnect in through my computer.
No worries.
Welcome to the panel, James.
Thank you. Finally. So one of the things I've been using is I use OneNote under a password protected page. And just curious, I think it should give me good protection that way. So I can open up my page through a password and see all my passwords and change them and do whatever I want. And yet no one can get in that unless they crack the OneNote.
Right. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, I don't think I would recommend that personally. You know, I would recommend like a purpose-built like password manager for sure. And it's really no different.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just if something ever happened to that password.
Yes. So if you're
right?
using like Office 365, are you using Office 365?
Yes.
So, you know, if
I know, sorry, no, I have the desktop version.
okay.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it is possible that if someone was able to get to your email, they could access your OneNote. It's possible.
But that OneNote has a protected password protected page as well.
Right.
On top of that, so they have to get into that password.
Yeah, it's kind of better, but it's not fantastic.
Right.
But it's not bad.
And I did have a comment, Dan, on
Sure.
when you mentioned playing and toying with spammers and phishings and that. So that's my wife and I used to enjoy doing that from time to time to keep them on the line, right?
Keep
and
them busy.
Did it
Yeah.
Once on a phone call, and as soon as they figured it out, there was this dark voice, and he just said, "I know your phone number. I know your address." And he said my address, and he said, "I can get you anytime I want." So
oh, wow.
I stopped playing with them after that. I just realized it's not worth it.
Yeah, fair enough.
To upset anybody to want to target me later on. So that was just my experience with it.
I had one not too long ago where it was the duck cleaning service they were calling, and I had them on the phone for probably about 40 minutes until they realized that I was talking about a bunch of like ducks in my backyard, and they were filthy. So I was very excited that I was having a service come and clean the ducks. And I was asking them if they also clean swans, because I've got a couple of those. And they weren't pleased. But again, the more of their time I can waste, the less time they have to be successful elsewhere.
Yeah,
so it's a fun little hobby of mine.
I speak French now, and they don't know what to do. They're just totally confused, right? And so,
yeah, awesome.
A bit of enjoyment in a short call, so that kind of works. Anyways, thanks for the presentation. It's very valuable. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Okay. Is there increased cybersecurity risk for different operating systems, or are they all relatively similar?
Yes. So Windows 10 is probably your best bet. I know that Windows 11 is out now. Typically, I recommend that people wait a couple iterations before you go to Windows 11 while they work out the bugs. Also, you know, there's other software that may not yet be compatible with Windows 11. So Windows 10, specifically Windows 10 Pro, if it's a business computer, is the most secure and up to date. There are folks that use like Windows XP is still out there. Windows 7 is still out there. They're both out of support. So they're not receiving any security updates whatsoever. So if you have any machines out there that are still on Windows 7, get them off, get them to Windows 10 or replace the machines.
Okay. Thank you. I think at this point, I'm going to do a last call for questions. So we will give you some time to type them out in either the question and answer spot or in the chat box, because I've exhausted the ones that we've received so far. Nikki, I'm not sure if you had any questions or if you've got them answered. No? Okay. Yeah, so while we're waiting to see if any last questions come in, I would like to encourage everyone to fill out our very short feedback form to give feedback for our presenter Dan and feedback for us for future sessions. So I'll pop that in the chat. So you can click that there. You will get a copy of the presentation slides from today and a recording of this webinar no later than Thursday this week. The recording will be available publicly on our YouTube. And I believe Rhys is also posting the recording on their YouTube as well, once we can get that file to them. So lots of places to watch this. And I think that's all I have to say for now. I don't see any other questions coming in. Of course, if something pops into your head, please get in touch with me, Mickey or Shauna, via email. If you would like to speak to Reis Informatica and get connected with Dan to talk about cybersecurity solutions for your business or for personal reasons, please let us know and we'd be happy to make a warm introduction. Other than that, I think I'll hand it back to Mickey.
That's wonderful. And I think I can just reiterate what Jordan just said. Thank you so much, Dan, and everybody for sticking through and having spending your lunchtime with us. If you have anything question related or you want to dig in a little deeper, as Jordan said, just let Shauna or Jordan or I know, and we'll connect you and try to get the answers that you're looking for. Before you all go, just a quick thank you, of course, to Reis Informatica, to Dan, to our SLEO interpreters, Liz and Dean, to our sponsors, to Jordan and Shauna, and to all of you. I just want to say thank you and have a wonderful rest to your Tuesday. We hope you come back again next month. Have a great afternoon.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care.
Have a great day.
You too.